My first love was a childhood friend, Lily. We always ran around the backyard together. One day, she took a spectacular fall. Witnessing such a sight, I couldn't help but gasp. "Did you see my?" she asked, her face turned bright red. "My name is Abel Barnett. I have a soft spot for the name my parents gave me. But the parents who gave me this name are no longer in this world. My mother remarried when I was a child. I don't remember anything about my real father. The only father I knew was the man my mother remarried. He was such a kind person, I always thought he was my real father. When I was in grade school, he fell ill due to a sudden cold snap and passed away unexpectedly. My mother, who loved him dearly, was so saddened by his loss that I think it took a toll on her mentally. Her health declined soon after his death, and she passed away too. I was left alone. I learned as a grade schooler that people could indeed die from sorrow. The person who took me in after I was left alone was my paternal grandmother, Bella Barnett. I was told that she was the one who had opposed my parents' marriage till the very end. My grandfather had already passed away, leaving only me and my grandmother as the remaining relatives. But I'm not related to my grandmother by blood. We may not be blood relatives, but the fact remains that we are the only remaining members of the Barnett family. My grandmother took over my grandfather's business and is still actively working. She embodies the word matriarch. She looks frail and might even seem weak. But once she gets going, her intensity is so great that even full-grown men bow down in front of her at the doorway, which I thought was quite terrifying as a child. When I found out I was going to be taken in by such a grandmother, I felt nothing but fear. I remember crying every day until the day I had to move in with such a scary person. I am now 25 years old. My grandmother, who I had always been fearful of, ended up raising me admirably. When we first started living together, neither of us knew how to interact with each other, creating an odd atmosphere, I suppose. The one who acted as a go-between for us was the daughter of the gardener who worked at my grandmother's house, called Lily. When I was first taken in by my grandmother, Lily was just an infant and was left on our porch while her father worked in the garden. Apparently, her father was in the midst of single parenting after his wife had run out on him, and my grandmother had given him permission to bring Lily to work. For 3 years, my relationship with my grandmother remained at a stalemate, and I never felt at ease when I came home. One day, when I came home from school, there was a mattress laid out on the porch, and the little baby was laying on top of it. When I peeked over, she gave me a big smile. Her face was so adorable that I poked her cheek lightly. Suddenly she started crying loudly, and I was taken aback. That's when my grandmother showed up. "Welcome home, Abel. Oh dear, it seems she's in a bit of a mood." Picking up the crying infant, my grandmother began to gently soothe her. Seeing this side of my grandmother was something new for me, and I'm pretty sure my face showed my surprise. Swinging gently in my grandmother's arms, the baby seemed to be enjoying herself. She began to laugh gleefully. "Grandma, can you do magic?" When I asked that, my grandmother gave a slightly surprised look. Then, with a grin, she said, "Yes, I can." "Can Grandma's magic make my chest feel better too?" Looking at the laughing baby, I said that. My chest always felt cold and hurt. It had been that way since I lost my parents. If my grandmother could do magic, I wanted her magic to make me laugh like this baby. I was a bit more immature than my friends at the time. In response to my words, my grandmother said, "It's a secret," and gently placed her hand on my chest. When she came close, a strange scent mixed with the baby's milk smell and the incense my grandmother always burned. As my grandmother gently touched me, my chest became warm. After that, the choking feeling that had always been there in my chest disappeared like you wouldn't believe. "That's amazing. It's amazing. It doesn't hurt anymore," I excitedly told my grandmother. I still remember how my grandmother laughed with a somewhat troubled look on her face. From that day on, the strange distance that had been between me and my grandmother vanished. Lily and I are 5 years apart. When I started middle school, Lily was in elementary school. Lily, who was free to come and go in my grandmother's garden, and I quickly became close friends. Our circumstances were similar, both missing our mothers, and we were closer than my friends at school. Having known Lily since she was a baby, I had always watched her grow up. As she entered the upper grades of elementary school, the attitudes of the boys around her began to change. Lily had grown into a girl who was somehow mature and glamorous. Her father, a head gardener, used to worry about her so much. There was even a time when she was approached by a suspicious person on her way home from school and rushed into our garden with a terrified expression on her face. Lily couldn't stand herself for being that way. I remember that was around the time she cut her hair short and stopped wearing skirts. After graduating from college, I spent a year unemployed, staying with my grandmother. She was getting old and her health was beginning to fail. Her health had started to decline when I was in my sophomore year of high school. It was around the time I was deciding which college to attend. My grandmother told me to do whatever I wanted, so I decided to attend the closest low-ranked university from my home in my hometown. My class advisor tried to persuade me to aim for a more prestigious college, but I had no intention of leaving my grandmother. Of course, I got into the university. After graduation, I spent a year caring for my grandmother. Once her health finally stabilized, I started job hunting and managed to secure employment. Since I had no intention of leaving my hometown, I decided to work at a major advertising agency located here. I figured the 1-year gap wouldn't matter much. I thought so, but the world isn't that sweet. I was made painfully aware of this on the day of the job offer ceremony. There were 5 other new recruits apart from me, all of whom were elites who had graduated from prestigious universities and seemed to take pride in that. The person in charge of training us new recruits was Mr. Baker, who also graduated from a prestigious university. I was surprised to see him blatantly favor the junior employees who had graduated from the same university as him. Being a low-ranked university graduate, I was treated like I wasn't even human. It's been like this since the pre-joining orientation, and I'm sick and tired of it every day. "Oh, you look so fed up again today." My grandmother, who had regained some of her energy, was sitting on a rocking chair in a room with a view of the garden, knitting something. Even though she was frail and getting older, the strength in her eyes hadn't been changed. I've realized that the world can be quite tough. I tell my grandmother about Mr. Baker in a humorous way. My grandmother laughed heartily at my story. "Wow, there is such an old-fashioned man like him still around. Anyway, Lily's back after a long time." "What? Lily?" Hearing Lily's name blew away my gloomy mood in an instant. I haven't seen Lily, who should be 20 years old this year, since she graduated from junior high school. We've only been keeping in touch through emails. Apparently, Lily had consulted with my grandmother about her future path when she was about to graduate from junior high school. Lily was firm that she didn't need to attend high school to fulfill her dream. Of course, her father, Gardener Depp, was strongly opposed. He insisted that she should go to high school, leading to arguments almost every night. One day, when I came home from school, I found my grandmother and the Depps sitting facing each other in the living room. When my grandmother noticed me, she beckoned me over. I took a seat next to my grandmother. Mr. Depp looked troubled, and Lily was deadly serious. I quickly realized this was about her future plans. I understand what you're coming from, Dad. I get the importance of high school, but I don't need it. Lily was the first to speak up. Even so, you must understand the difficulties you'll face in the real world without at least a high school diploma, Mr. Depp said, seemingly troubled. He seemed past the point of anger. I want to work with horses. I want to become a stable hand. For that, I need to train at a ranch. I don't want to take detours for my dreams. It's easier to become a civil servant in local horse racing than in the major leagues. Still, practical experience is necessary. Starting earlier than others might give her an edge. Lily was earnestly trying to convince her father that it's a waste to enjoy high school life while setting aside what she really wants to do. I've always admired this side of Lily. She's so straightforward, without a shred of hesitation. She has helped me many times when I've felt troubled. Mr. Depp, Lily has a point. There's a lot to gain from high school life, but what if what she gains is not what she needs? Isn't it up to Lily to decide that? Mr. Depp seemed to choke on his words at my comment. I think he was lost for words. I agree with you. I think Mr. Depp is just worried about Lily. So, can you leave Lily's future to me? I'll find a proper training place. I promise. Let's witness the path of the youth together. My grandmother gently spoke to Mr. Depp. I've always thought there's a persuasive power in my grandmother's voice. It's hard to argue against it. In the end, Mr. Depp gave in, and Lily left for a ranch in Alaska right after graduating middle school. We haven't seen each other for quite a while since then. Now, Lily is back from Alaska. I felt a bit upset that she didn't contact me. She said she didn't want to bother you because you're busy with your new job. I'd rather see her healthy and happy than avoid meeting out of consideration. I genuinely felt that. The next day, there was an orientation before starting my new job. I was heading to the company with a feeling of disgust from early morning. Mr. Depp was already starting to prune the plants in the garden. The scent of the plants calmed me down a little. The snipping sounds echoed pleasantly in the still, cool air. I had some time left, so I quietly watched Mr. Depp working for a while. He's aged a little and gained the dignity of a master. Apparently, he's planning to take on a few apprentices next year. I think that being a craftsman himself, Mr. Depp must have understood Lily's feelings better than anyone. As I got older, I finally began to notice things like this. Master Abel, is today your company's entrance ceremony? Mr. Depp, noticing my gaze, stopped his work. Even though I'm 25, he still calls me Master Abel. It feels a bit awkward, but it's also somewhat comforting. Actually, today is just an orientation. It's a training before joining the company. There's a lot to learn, I said, scratching my head, and Mr. Depp let out a hearty laugh. Well, it's just the beginning, isn't it? Keep it up. Bolstered by Mr. Depp's encouragement, I managed to get going. After bidding him goodbye with I'm off, I headed for the office. Once I arrived at work, it was clear I was the outsider. The fact that a guy like me, who graduated from a low-ranked college and had spent time unemployed, was hired became a hot topic. Mr. Baker was loudly discussing my background with the other newcomers. It's like he doesn't know the concept of personal privacy. And even though he knew I had walked into the room, he didn't stop the conversation. He ended it by saying, he must have some big connections, looking at me right in the eyes. I try not to let it get to me, but it's irritating to be called Mr. Bottom T University all day. What were you doing after graduation, Mr. Bottom T University? Unemployed, right? Were you a NEET? I'm fed up with Mr. Baker, who keeps picking on me at every opportunity. Having to listen to his stories about how much effort he put into getting into this company, and about his university exploits, makes it hard to absorb the important training content. But the obvious bullying didn't stop there. I was the only one not given any documents, or not notified of room change from the conference room. It was like the kind of teasing you'd see in elementary school. It was so ridiculous, I seriously considered leaving halfway through. If this is what working here is like, this could go on forever. That thought alone drains all my energy. All I can do is pray I get assigned to a department as far from Mr. Baker as possible. But the problem isn't just Mr. Baker. The whole company's atmosphere is like Mr. Baker's. While he may be an extreme case, it's common practice here to judge people by their education, as if that defines who they are. I got a strong sense of this prevailing trend. After a dreary day of training, I returned home to find Lily cleaning the yard. I found myself not being able to say hi to her for a moment. "Oh, Abel, it's been a while." Lily greeted me swinging with a bamboo broom. Her waist seemed unusually thick. I kind of messed up. I'm back home for treatment. Noticing my gaze, she lifted her shirt's hem with a swift motion. Underneath was a white cast. Apparently, she fell off a horse during training. She's come home to recover while she's on leave. Working at the stable involves a lot of heavy lifting. The ranch owner told her that her back is crucial and she should get it treated properly. Watching Lily with the bamboo broom in her hands, I'm reminded of our childhood days playing together in the garden. My first love was Lily. One day, I recalled Lily taking a dramatic tumble in the yard. After she fell, Lily asked shyly, looking up, "Did you see me?" I answered instinctively, yes. From the next day on, she wouldn't speak to me for a week. I remember that was hard. "Are you reminded of something silly now?" She noticed right away when I got lost in old memories. She raises the bamboo broom, intimidating me. No, not at all. Lily, broom in hand, starts chasing me as I panic. I run away without thinking. My grandmother was laughing loudly from the porch, watching us run all around the yard. "Don't you feel pain from running so much?" Out of breath due to lack of exercise, Lily still chases me with a calm look. Of course it hurts. I'm savoring the pain. It seems she is experiencing pain as a lesson from the mistakes she made. I thought it was a stern, Lily-like statement. It's the path I chose. This pain is nothing. Eventually, I was easily caught and Lily climbed onto my back in victory. She didn't care that my suit was getting dirty. Lily raised a victory shout on my back. I completed the pre-employment training, and it was the day of the entrance ceremony. I was still unsure whether it's the right decision to join that company. I was still doubting. Yet, I put on my suit, tightened my tie, and headed towards the company from the front door, regardless of my own will. If I keep piling up days like this, my current situation might become a laughing matter someday. I feel like I was deceiving myself by thinking that way. Bad premonitions are often right, and an incident occurred at the entrance ceremony. It happened just before the ceremony started. As usual, Mr. Baker started messing with me. In front of the guests from outside the company, he loudly called me Bottom T University guy. It's surprising you made it to the entrance ceremony. People from F-ranked universities really have thick skins. Mr. Baker intentionally speaks so loudly that the guests can hear that I'm from a Bottom T University. I tried to brush him off with a forced smile. "How did you manage to get employed? Wouldn't it be better to say it openly in front of everyone? Mr. Baker seemed to enjoy ridiculing me. It's honestly annoying how persistent he is in picking on me. The guest started to stir a bit. Probably a reaction to the word nepotism. I'd really like to see the face of your parents who got you in here using connections, sneered Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker said it triumphantly to me, who said nothing in return. You want to see his parent? I raised him. A stern voice echoed throughout the hall. I quickly turned towards the voice and saw my grandmother sitting in a wheelchair. Dressed in a suit, with a guest ribbon pinned to her chest. The wheelchair was pushed closer to Mr. Baker and myself. It was Lily, who was pushing the wheelchair. Mr. Baker was taken aback at the sudden appearance of my grandmother. The moment my grandmother moved forward, the executives began to rustle. I raised him. Do you have a problem with that? My grandmother's eyes were filled with anger. Mr. Baker was at a loss for words at her power. Just a moment ago he was openly belittling me. Now he was like a frog being stared down by a snake. Now, what to do? After my grandmother said it, casting a glance towards the executive seats. The executives were flustered by her appearance. Her company is a client of this company. Most of the deals are made with the company my grandmother runs. It seems that my grandmother was called to give a congratulatory speech to the new employees. Of course, the executives knew about me. They had even told me during the interview that I wasn't hired due to nepotism. Mr. Baker seemed to have realized his mistake as he noticed the executives are getting agitated. Isn't the level of civility in this company too low? No one stopped the belittling attitude. I think this disqualifies it as a business partner and as Abel's workplace. What do you think about that, Chairman? Lily said. My grandmother nodded slowly at Lily's words. Then she turned to me and said, "Let's go home, Abel." I felt oddly refreshed. Right, I didn't want to join this company. I've caused a fuss. Please continue the ceremony. I'll take my grandson with me. We'll contact you about the contracts, said my grandmother. The executives raised their voices. Wait, please. Mr. Baker was being yelled at to apologize. But it seemed like my grandmother didn't hear any of the commotion. With a cool face, my grandmother said, "Let's go home." Back home, I faced my grandmother again. She told me that she had been worried about me going to work every day with a gloomy face. Abel, don't you have something you really want to do? Honestly, I was surprised when you chose that company. My grandmother stumbled over her words. She probably sees through everything. I chose that company for my grandmother. You're too kind. Live more freely. She spoke in a tone that revealed she understood I had chosen my employment in a place that would please my grandmother. I resolved myself. Taking a deep breath, I bowed deeply until my forehead touched the floor. Please, let me become Mr. Depp's apprentice as a landscaper. I had always admired Mr. Depp for his craftsmanlike demeanor. Having lost my father at an early age, Mr. Depp was the man I admired, the adult figure I looked up to. I want to live as a craftsman, I said. Speaking out the words that were stuck in my chest felt like breathing life back into my real self. I'm sorry for holding it in all this time. Inside, I apologized to myself. Afterwards, I officially became Mr. Depp's apprentice. Despite becoming an apprentice, being called Master Abel was somewhat embarrassing. But the instruction in landscaping was strict and relentless. Being told to learn the craft, I was desperate every day just to keep up. But every day was incredibly fulfilling. After her recovery, Lily returned to her ranch in Alaska. She told me that starting next year, she would be working as a stable hand at a local racetrack. I couldn't afford to lose to Lily, who was steadily achieving her dreams. "Abel, you're just a late bloomer." She teased me from time to time with such words. Who would become independent first? It felt like a competition. We were physically apart, but I felt closer to Lily than before. After a few years, I had grown enough to be called Mr. Depp's right-hand man. I had decided long ago that once I became independent, I would propose to Lily. And today, I told her that. Honestly, I thought she would say yes right away. But her answer was wait. Lily had started working as a public servant. I painfully understood the meaning behind her wait. I immediately replied, "I'll wait as long as it takes. I don't want a foolish relationship where one of us has to endure something. If we respect each other and care for each other, we can wait for each other forever." There's no doubt about that,